These two guys have Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackey and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
It's a Scoop Tuesday here on the podcast. That's where we bring in our friend Darren Doogie Wolfson from the 5 Eyewitness News Sports Department for some inside information and some speculation about our favorite Minnesota sports teams. Congrats, Doogs. You were all over the Mike Conley extension, even down to pretty close on the numbers. So that happens yesterday. We can talk about that, but man, we have NFL free agency season looming here. The combine next week. There's all sorts of stories coming out now about, Florio's on a roll on Pro Football Talk about Justin Jefferson and whether they will or won't go more than one guaranteed year, and Kirk Cousins. So you tell us, Dukes, where do you want to start here unpacking some of the Vikings loose ends going into free agency in a couple weeks?
Well, Phil, we can start right there. So, Judd, do you have TJ Hawkinson's extension details top of your head? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm 99% sure they are guaranteeing money beyond 1 year. So this talk of the Vikings only guaranteeing a quarterback beyond 1 year, that to me flies in the face of this TJ Hawkinson extension.
I think I can straighten this out, dude. So Madison also has guarantees into 2024.
This 93% of Madison's contract when he signed it last March was guaranteed for 2 years.
What he's saying is full guarantees. So Cousins had a 3-year fully guaranteed contract. Jefferson wants full guarantees. So there's no hesitation to guarantee money beyond 24. What there is a pushback of guaranteeing fully a contract beyond the first year. What they want is they want the guarantee for 20. So this contract will start in 25. They want the guarantee for 26 to kick in 26, not upon signing. And what Florio brought up, and it does make sense. At first I thought, is he hearing this or what? But you can tell he was told. My guess is that the Jefferson camp is singing like canaries right now. But what he brought up was when Carr signed his contract with the Raiders, it had a brief out in year 2, and the Raiders exercised the out and got out. So what the Vikings don't want to do is have a full guarantee where if something, God forbid, happens to Jefferson, they feel stuck. It's still so weird, but it's full guarantees. It's not just guarantee.
Well, I wonder if it's guarantees even beyond 26. Are we talking 27?
You might be right.
I guess that becomes a slippery slope.
Yep.
But let me make this very clear. The Wilfs aren't dummies. We can attack the Wilfs on many fronts, but they're willing to spend money. They also fully realize Justin Jefferson is the face of the franchise. I'm saying because the deal came so close on September 9th, I'm telling you, there were Vikings folks who thought pen was about to be put to paper. That's how close an extension came before that Sunday opener against Tampa, that I'd like to think that they can find a way to get this done that does include guarantees beyond 25, 26, whatever it is, beyond 1 year. I guess if we're talking a fully guaranteed, 4 years, $175 million, okay, that's a different discussion. Would anybody guarantee a wide receiver that much money over 4 years? But the Wilfs, I don't think that's going to be some sort of breaking point. Guarantees beyond 1 year. And so I'd still like to think that this thing gets done. Doesn't need to get done right now. Yes, I do believe it's the Jefferson side that's doing some chirping. I have no doubt about that. That's not the Vikings. That's fine. That's what Florio does. That's what we all do, right? We're reaching out to different sources. We're trying to gather as much information as possible. But I'm coming from the Viking standpoint that I just don't think guarantees beyond 1 year will be any sort of breaking point.
You guys seeing the end of The Departed with Jack Nicholson and all those,
Great
right?
film.
Mark Wahlberg. It's a great movie. And there's that chaos outside the elevator or on the rooftop or whatever. And they're all it's a standoff and everyone's waiting for someone else to make a move, right? So you've got right now, this is what's complicated. You've got Justin Jefferson waiting on the Vikings to kind of figure out their quarterback situation, or at least that's what's being portrayed from his camp.
Yes, although Phil, he'll put pen to paper. He will. Like, if they're willing to pay him what he's looking for, right? Like, his agency represents J.J. McCarthy. If it's J.J. McCarthy as the Vikings quarterback, like, I don't think Justin Jefferson is going to say, no, I'm not signing. That's just one example.
But then you've got Kirk Cousins, who's waiting for the Vikings to up their offer. But also, like, if you're Kirk and the Vikings come back and say, yeah, we're not going to re-sign Danielle, we're kind of going into a reset mode. He's kind of waiting on a couple things. And then Danielle Hunter is waiting on the Vikings to figure out the Kirk Cousins situation because it's like Danielle's the one that's been neglected the most, it kind of feels like, with all these conversations. So I guess I don't know how they're going to get all these dominoes to fall in line the way that they want to before March 13th, which is the deadline for these void years to kick in and for the contracts to void and for these guys to explore free agency. This feels like it could end in the Vikings losing a lot of key pieces, much more likely than them getting everyone back in-house, I guess.
Well, I mean, like, how do you view that? Like, if they're not willing to guarantee for Cousins 2026, which I told you last week, like, I would be very surprised if the Vikings were willing to guarantee money for Kirk in 2026. Do you define that as a loss? Or do you just say, okay, like, yes, mutual interest. Yes, if there's a way to make it work, Kirk back, great. But we're also realistic. Like, this isn't the Rick Spielman regime. And so, I don't know, Phil. Like, do you look at that as a loss?
I mean, Danielle, my take.
Like, Danielle didn't cash out his last contract. I think Danielle ends up with the highest bidder, whether that's Jacksonville, the interest going back a year, this new reported interest, although Chicago ended up talking to the Vikings last summer about a trade. So Chicago's had some interest in Danielle going back some time as well, or maybe some other team. Like, I just have a hard time believing the Vikings are going to make Danielle, as much as he loves it here, as much as Brian Flores wants Danielle back, I have a hard time believing the Vikings are willing to give him the highest financial offer. And so I can see Danielle leaving. Now even on Monday, we have the Marcus Davenport news. I mean, I would have told you guys on December 30th, January 2nd, January 8th, like, no way, no how. Now, they did this with Dalvin Tomlinson last year, pushing back the void date. But I guess if you could convince him to come back, low base salary, all sorts of incentives for games played, maybe. I'm a big believer. Time heals just about every wound, right? So as frustrated as the Vikings were that he did not come back in December, like, they thought he'd be back after the bye.
Yeah.
And so the fact he didn't come back for not only that Vegas game, but then the Bengals game, then the Lions game, then the Packers game, then the Lions game. The fact he missed all those games December into January, there was a lot of internal frustration in Egan over that. But I guess if there's a way, if he's willing to accept a low base salary, heck, you could save some money on the cap, right? With the dead cap hit being $6.8 million, right? So there's just so many tentacles tied to mid-March, right? You laid out Cousins, you laid out Hunter. It's also now Marcus Davenport. But I'm just telling you, on Danielle, like, Phil, I'll be shocked if he doesn't take the highest financial offer. This is his true chance, even though we thought it would be the second contract. They messed that up. His fault, his camp's fault on that one. Could have cashed out more, even though he really likes it here. But I'm just telling you, I think Danielle ends up taking the highest financial offer.
On Jefferson, I think the intriguing thing here, guys, is not the fact that there is some type of hiccup. I think it's this. We now know approximately what that is. Because, Dukes, we've talked about this for months now. It never made sense that, as you like to say, pen was not put to paper before opening day last year over just like a financial, I want 135. No, we're going 132, right? That didn't make a ton of sense. It made a ton of sense that there was something about the contract itself, whether that be the term. The Vikings were trying to sign a 5-year deal. Jefferson was requesting 3, which was suggested. But this report by Florio, to me, at least gives us context of the issue. And with context of the issue, I think what now becomes a conversation, at least, and Phil broached this on Purple Daily yesterday, which is, does that issue force you to potentially, if you are going to draw a line in the sand both ways here, to consider at least making phone calls on potential trades here? Because this, to me, is a very intriguing one. First of all, good on the Jefferson camp. First of all, for looking at Kirk and saying, if you were going to guarantee Kirk, you really should guarantee us, because Justin Jefferson's one of the best in the entire league. But the Vikings might say, sorry, we just don't. And now the question becomes, would a team capitulate and say, we will? But I think that this very much opens up some very difficult conversations and questions. I'm not saying that this is simple, and there's a lot of people who aren't going to want to go here. But this does at least cause you to broach the subject of, could this be just a simple line in the sand that forces the Vikings to explore their options?
Well, I mean, I think they'll at least listen. I mean, would you guys agree, as important as Jefferson is, the number one goal for Kwesi, that front office, KOC, is to find a quarterback that in theory can be successful under a rookie contract, but also the idea that this quarterback is going to be here for the next 10 to 15 years. That trumps anything Justin Jefferson related. So let's just stretch this out. Could you use Jefferson to move up to pick 2 or pick 3, New England, to get that quarterback? If there's a quarterback they identify that they feel like, hey, there's no way that quarterback is going to be there at pick 11, is it possible? I guess I'm not dismissing it. I still think Justin Jefferson ultimately signs a contract extension. He remains in purple. But as you bring that up, Judd, I'm not saying like 0% chance. Put it that way.
Let me ask you guys this, all right? Little reckless speculation Thursday on a Tuesday here, okay?
Reckless speculation.
I'm going to give you 2 scenarios. And no, Judd, you don't get to make up a third scenario and create an answer that isn't on the board here, okay? 2 scenarios.
All right, let's hear.
All right, I've got my pen. Go ahead.
You can either have Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson both back and highly paid. So Kirk, let's say on a 2-year deal for like $80 million plus the cap hit from his voided out contract, and you got to figure out how to just deal with that. But it's Kirk highly paid $40 million and Justin Jefferson highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. Or you can trade Justin Jefferson, maybe for one of those top 3 picks. You let Kirk move on. And so door number 2 would be you draft a quarterback in the top 3, and then you move your way maybe from 11 up even a little bit higher, but somewhere in that range, and you draft one of these other 3 wide receivers. Maybe you move up and go get Marvin Harrison Jr. with your 11 and a couple other assets. Would you rather have stud young quarterback, stud young receiver from this year's draft, or Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson both being paid near the top of their market at their position?
Door 2 for me. Young. Because if I stay with status quo and I bring Kirk back, I'm basically saying that I think I can win a Super Bowl with Kirk. And by the way, then I can't make any additions, basically. No, for the future of the franchise, with where things stand, there have been years where I would have said, no, I'll take door 1. In this case, I'm going door 2. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, Phil, that's a lot to digest. So you mean to tell me there's a pathway to getting Marvin Harrison Jr. in addition?
Or maybe Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors. Malik Neighbors.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's a lot, but okay, sign me up for that option. But does it matter what I think? If you're asking me what the Wilfs are thinking, so 2 years, 80 for Kirk, is 25 fully guaranteed?
I think he's going to make you guarantee it. I don't think you have any leverage to not guarantee it.
Yeah.
I mean, Kirk would have to literally say, I'm not going to I don't even care what the Falcons have to say. What do you need me to do, Vikings? I want to be here. And he has shown 0 evidence of that to this point.
Correct. Yeah. And I mean, there's 0 evidence to suggest that he's willing to do that right now.
This is his Super Bowl right now.
Ongoing.
He is dialed in right now. He is focused. He's working Tuesdays in his office. Okay, he's probably on the phone with his agent on Tuesdays. This is his time to shine, man. So
I mean, I would imagine the Wilfs go with choice 1. So yeah, Judd and I are choice 2. The Wilfs go choice 1 if it's not a 3-year deal for Kirk. And yeah, I mean, if JJ is re-signing, yes. I mean, of course, he will become the highest paid non-quarterback.
Now, I do think I'll break my own rule. I think an option 3 of Jefferson and a young quarterback would be ideal. But in this scenario, I think I go door number 2 as well. Because I know
coming
that
at me and then breaking the rule.
Cousins, it's my own game. It's my own game.
I don't care.
Cousins plus Jefferson, highly paid, does not equal Super Bowl unless you are aces in your next 3 drafts, probably. I mean, you would need to nail like an entire defensive starting front in the draft. You'd probably have to nail a number 1 cornerback somewhere too. So if the starting point is, unless somebody on this show disagrees, highly paid Kirk Cousins plus highest paid non-quarterback Justin Jefferson probably doesn't get you anywhere near a Super Bowl. Because where's the value? Where's the rest of your roster? Where, like, what, how else are you building, right? I just like, if that's a non-starter for winning a Super Bowl, then don't do it. Don't do it. Like, move on to some other plan.
I just need the proof that the Wilfs are willing to do that. That's why I continue to say, like, I think the JJ deal gets done. It may be in the summer.
And that's
have
fine.
to be now. They can talk in person next week in Indianapolis. That's fine. They've had enough dialogue going back many, many months, right? So, maybe talks advance next week. But it doesn't need to get done next week or the week after. It can get done 2-3 months from now. But till I hear otherwise, Phil, like, I still think that's the most likely outcome.
But wouldn't right now, so Dukes, I agree completely on the Wilfs' state of mind, because I think that we've all covered them enough to know that. And I get what you're saying. Like, there's not a pressure cooker to like move on from Jefferson right now or to get the contract done. But I will say this, if you think about this, with where this team stands right now, and let's just say for the sake of the conversation that Kirk is going to walk, because it certainly looks like that's a huge possibility. And let's say Danielle walks. Doesn't a decision on Jefferson sooner than later actually make a ton of sense? Because one, I do not think he is going to set foot again in Egan until the contract is done, nor do I think he should. And so, like, if you wait, if you're like, you know what, let's worry about everything else and we'll slow cook JJ. And now it's still a problem of, and again, we seem to know the problem, guaranteed money. And the Jefferson's camp's like, we're not going to budge. And the Vikings are like, well, we can't do that. And now he doesn't show up. You've forfeited a chance to do what Phil just said, which is potentially maximize the trade value of Justin Jefferson immediately. And plus, here's your problem too. If this is a true problem between the Vikings and Jefferson's camp, the more this drags on, the harder it gets for the Vikings to maximize the trade return. So I guess my point is this. If this is not going to work, I think with where the Vikings are currently, I think it makes a ton of sense to try and get this resolved ASAP, because if you flip the page by having 2 first-round picks and both are high, you could put yourself in a pretty good catbird seat as opposed to allowing this to fester. There are times with Jefferson where I would have done exactly that. I don't know this team is in a position now for that to be the wise move if as many veterans walk as we think are going to walk.
All right, well, that's fair. Let me give you another tentacle to all this. What does Dallas give CeeDee Lamb? And CeeDee Lamb wants to become the highest paid non-quarterback, certainly the highest paid wide receiver. So what does Jerry Jones do to take care of CeeDee Lamb? Presumably a deal gets worked out down there, right? So does that just continue to have that Jefferson number climb? So to your point, Judd, yeah, sure. Get the Jefferson deal done in the next month compared to waiting until July 28th.
Here's another question for you guys, all right?
There's a reckless speculation Tuesday. It's going nuts.
Reckless speculation.
Who do you think has a greater impact on winning football games and winning championships? A receiver like Justin Jefferson or an interior disruptive defensive trenches guy like a Chris Jones or like a Justin Madubuike from the Ravens? Guys who are going to get you 15 sacks, interior blow-up plays. Because I would argue...
Well, I mean, if you give me Chris Jones from the Super Bowl, right? I mean...
Well, from the whole season.
Look at
I mean,
the Chiefs, right? But that is also presuming you're getting quarterback-level play like Patrick Mahomes. I think I would lean the wide receiver, but I know where you're going with that, Phil, that the evidence suggests the answer is not the wide receiver.
I mean, what if you went and signed, now this would take two to tango, but what if you went and signed Christian Wilkins or you went and signed Justin Madubuike with the money that you were going to pay Justin Jefferson for the next 4 years? Go take the 2 first-round draft picks that you get for Justin Jefferson, leverage your way up the board for a quarterback, go draft another wide receiver on a rookie scale contract next to Jordan Addison. Like, are there creative ways? Like, I feel like the discussion is so linear. Bring Cousins back. Are there creative ways to build a better 53? That's what I hope they're talking about internally. And I'm not outright advocating for trading JJ, but I want to know, like, what's the plan for building a Super Bowl 53 here?
I still want as many superstar talent player. Like, okay, Christian Wilkins is good. Is he in that first tier?
He's second tier. He's not Aaron Donald. He's not Chris Jones.
On Wilkins. Yeah, he's not Chris Jones. Like, to me, Justin Jefferson, now we can have a healthy debate about this, but to me, he's the best receiver in the game. Now, fine, if you want to debate Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, whoever, fine, go ahead. Devontae Adams. I just happen to think Justin Jefferson is the best receiver in the game. There's people in Detroit that will tell you, Brown, right? But just give me Jefferson, okay?
Yeah, those people are crazy.
Those 2 linemen you laid out, I need to do more work on those guys, and I guess. Like, they're good, Now, what does the money look like? How much money are you saving?
But it would be, in my scenario, it would be.
The difference is somewhere else.
And this is like a fictional scenario. There is a world where you could bring back a couple of the guys we're talking about, Jefferson included, and make room to sign one of these dudes in free agency. I'm not saying it's either or. But what I'm saying is, if you're going to pay one of them a lot of money, but along with that, I get money to spend on an interior pass rusher, and I get 2 first-round draft picks in the trade for Jefferson. I mean, what's the calculus in this front office and this ownership group have been playing checkers while other front offices have played chess. And that's why they can't win a playoff game. That's why they can't go back-to-back years and get to the playoffs. Like, they've only been to the playoffs back-to-back years once in 20 years because they're playing checkers while other front offices are playing chess. Other ownership groups are playing chess. So I'm just asking, like, what are the creative – let's do some creative whiteboarding here internally at Twin Cities Orthopedic Performance Center.
Disclaimer to you guys.
The idea why you brought in Kwesi? To play some chess?
In theory. You got to let him play chess, though.
Disclaimer 2, though. This show is not suggesting that any of us want Justin Jefferson to be traded. But if he's coming to you and saying something that contractually you can't do, and Florio does explain that there are some teams that guarantee contracts more, which sort of confuses me. Because as far as I know, nobody guarantees contracts fully. Like, the Cousins contract was unprecedented. And that was the Vikings in 2018. So I don't know what he is referring to. And to Doogie's point, perhaps there is enough wiggle room within that for the Vikings and the Jefferson people to come to an agreement. But nobody's saying that we want Jefferson to be dealt. But if he is basically giving you a scenario by which you will not do business and cannot live by, then you're going to have to do these things. Get creative. The last thing is, the more I think about this, I wonder if this is sort of the genesis, without explaining himself more, of where the Colin Cowherd, Justin Jefferson to the Patriots scenario came from.
He heard that somewhere.
He heard something, and he clearly didn't elaborate. Like, this now makes more sense, because on the surface, I was still like, I'm not trading Justin Jefferson. But if this is actually an issue where the Vikings are like, we cannot budge, we will not budge, that's the only way that type of thing starts to make some sense.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just look at the top 3. Okay. Yeah, Chicago, likely to have some dialogue. But, like, of those top 3, New England has always seemed like the most likely trade partner for the Vikings. Think about Kwesi the last couple years. I mean, I get it. First year moved way down, but there was some chatter of even moving up that year. But certainly last year, chatter of moving up for Anthony Richardson. I don't know how far off the ground it got. In fact, I'm not sure it got very far off the ground. But at least inquiries were made. Remember, I was told mid-season, I brought this up, in this space, this safe space, that Kwesi, when he identifies something he wants, uber aggressive. Like, he is going to do everything in his power to try to make it happen. Now, it takes 2 to tango, right? There's a lot of things he inquires on that just don't come to fruition. But Kwesi trying to move up in this draft, like, yes, like, I'll be shocked if he doesn't try, or if he hasn't already, right? I mean, those conversations started to take place in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. All right. So, yes, right. Like, to me, New England makes the most sense. How are you getting from 11 to 3? It's probably Jefferson, right? Like, I guess you can concoct a scenario where it's a ton of draft picks, Phil, but how exactly? Like, logically speaking, how are you getting from 11 to 3? To me, it probably involves Justin Jefferson.
Also, if you go from 11 to 3 without, and let's say you do it just giving up future draft capital, are you in a situation that the Panthers are in where, all right, cool, we got our quarterback. Hopefully your quarterback performs better as a rookie than their quarterback did. But now you don't have any first-round picks the next couple of years to continue building a roster around that young quarterback. So that's something to think about. Here's another thing to think about. All right, I know Judd has correctly been saying for the last year or two on Purple Daily in this show that at some point Kevin O'Connell has to develop another quarterback. But to this point through 2 years, Kevin has at every turn voiced his love for Kirk Cousins, his want for Cousins to still be here beyond 2023, hoping that he comes back from the Achilles. Like, there's no evidence to suggest that Kevin O'Connell is out on Kirk Cousins. In front of the camera, behind the camera, anywhere, right? But there's a lot of evidence to suggest that Kwesi is ready to move on from Cousins based on the stalling of the contract talks last year, this year, everything he said about wanting to maintain flexibility, his candid comments a year and a half ago to USA Today saying that, yeah, Kirk's not a Mahomes-type quarterback, right? You know, I think it's safe to say that Kwesi is very open to moving on, if not pushing to move on. Kevin, it's nice to have one of the top 12 quarterbacks in the world running your offense, throwing for 4,000 yards, right? What if those guys are in a room here this week, next week, and Kwesi says, okay, it's time to make this decision. I want to move on from Kirk. We can't do this. From a front office standpoint, we can't do this. And Kevin says, over my dead body, dude, he's my quarterback. Look what we've done the last couple years. You get him back in here. Like, could this create a rift between front office and I don't think this is all just like everyone on the same page behind the scenes, I guess. I think you'd like to believe that everyone is, but I wonder if that's not the case.
And Brian Flores is knocking on the damn door saying, let me into this conversation.
Where's my edge rusher? Where's Danielle?
I got to get some.
Have you talked to Danielle?
Coming back?
Yeah, where's my edge rusher? Where's my interior pass rusher? Where's my cornerback? Like, I need some pieces here, right? I worked wonders last year. I need more. Like, give me the talent. Phil, I don't think it'll get to that point. Yeah, do I think there's some disagreement at times? I don't know about specifically in this case, but could I potentially see some disagreement as you just laid out? Sure. But I don't think it would get to the breaking point of KOC saying, you know, like, hey, like Ziggy, Mark, you know, I'm calling you guys and, you know, Kwesi and I can't work together. You know,
this guy wants to get rid of Kirk. Can you believe this guy?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to get to that point. Yeah.
Okay.
But I think there's some healthy disagreement. You know, I'm not denying that. Right. But like KOC's not an idiot either. Like, you know, if it does take guaranteed money in 26, like Kevin has to just say, okay, Uncle Mercy, we're out. Like, we can't do that.
I'm out on the guaranteed money in 2025, by the way. Just like
then you're out.
Okay. You know, like it's not a hard decision then. Why are you guaranteeing $40 million a year for 2 years to a 36-year-old non-elite quarterback coming off an Achilles? Everyone should be fired if that happens.
I will say this, you know, it's interesting. Kwesi post his sit down with USA Today that Phil referenced a year and a half ago is pretty much quit talking. And when he does talk, it's just a lot of words. It's a lot of words that doesn't say much. O'Connell's much more of a politician. So I would urge that we don't put too much stock into what Kevin says at the podium. Like, I think that there's times where he does definitely tell you things. But when it comes to Kirk, which is obviously going back to that Kwesi sit down, a very sensitive topic, Doogs, I've never like walked away and said, he definitely like, this is what he thinks. So I'm not saying that KOC does not like Kirk. And I'm not saying that Doogs, you're wrong. I think there probably is healthy disagreement between Kwesi and Kevin at times. But I also don't think what Kevin has said at the podium about Kirk necessarily reflects his what he says internally in the TCO Performance Center boardrooms about Kirk.
I would agree with that. I'm fascinated to find out, what plan they're formulating with both those guys at the podium 1 week from today. So next Tuesday in Indianapolis, Kevin O'Connell at the podium, then separately, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah at the podium. What message will be conveyed? I promise you, there's a lot of meetings this week about what message to convey.
Oh, this is such a juicy
Negotiations are difficult. We've been very intentional about our conversations. And intentionality
super intentional.
The intentionality of our conversations is the key to the bedrock of how this team has been built. And we believe that Kirk Cousins, no matter what happens, has been a marvelous ambassador, along with Netflix, which I now have a free subscription to because I watched the Kirk doc. It's gonna be the greatest doublespeak of all time. I guarantee it.
Hey, before we get into,
but the meetings will ramp up. I mean, and hey, I saw the Albert Breer note that like it was some sort of like surprise to some that Mike McCartney and the Vikings have recently spoken. Of course, they're having regular dialogue. I know Kirk went on the record at the Super Bowl saying things really won't ramp up until early March or sometime in March. But yeah, the agent, of course. I mean, the agent has had regular dialogue with Rob Brzezinski, others with the Vikings going back weeks. So hopefully that's not some sort of revelation.
Yeah. Hey, before we empty the scoop bag here, a couple shout outs. So number one, we're transitioning to a new merchandise platform. So right now on our current platform, scorenorth.com/shop, everything is 20% off. The Before I Die swag, the Victory Monday swag, Purple Daily Flagrant Howls, all of it is 20% off with the promo code SALE, scorenorth.com/shop, promo code SALE at checkout. Also, our friends at Zero Res are here to deep clean your homes. In fact, they have a 4.9 out of 5-star rating on Google with 17,000 reviews, which is pretty insane. Call Zero Res today or go to the website, zeroresminnesota.com, and ask for the Score North special. That's 3 rooms, 0 resified, starting at just $119 and a free hallway. And this month, take $75 off when you get your air ducts Zero Res clean. That's 952 Zero Res or zeroresminnesota.com. Spell it forward or backwards. It spells the same, Zero Res. Okay, Doogie, last minute or two. Mike Conley comes back on a really team-friendly deal for one of the better point guards in the NBA still, even in his late 30s. They're going to have to navigate some luxury tax things, second apron things, but they've got one of the best teams in the NBA. Mike Conley is one of the core pieces of what they're building here. So I love it. Tell us about Conley and anything else left in your scoop bag.
Yeah, I mean, I love it too. I mean, they had to solve the point guard conundrum with Morris a free agent this summer. Before this extension, Conley a free agent this summer. So they were looking at second apron possibilities regardless. On the surface, 2 years, $22 million, both years, fully guaranteed. Now, the contract has not been filed yet with the league. So I am curious if there's any mechanics, with that second year, the 25-26 season. Does Mike have any hammer power, anything? But he's guaranteed the 2 years. The Wolves, put it this way, it's not a team option for 25-26. So the Wolves don't have any sort of hammer in that regard. But just on the surface, 2 years, north of $20 million. Now I don't know if there was a team with cap space this summer with Mike's desire to win at a high level. I don't know if there was a great fit, but still, to me, incredible bargain. If he ends up being a backup, even in a year or in 2 years, you pay that much money on a per year basis for that leadership, to have that mind in the locker room. So yeah, phenomenal deal. And hey, I wasn't sure it would get done this fast. I brought up, based on his comments back in October at Media Day, hey, there's an interest in him staying here beyond this year. But then I mentioned in early November, I checked, hey, talks had not picked up at all. Then I looked back through some text messages. I reported in this space on February 1st, a Reckless Speculation Thursday, but it wasn't Reckless Speculation, that, hey, talks were underway. But still, from February 1st until now, I wasn't sure a deal would get done this fast. But You don't turn down, like on the surface, regardless of everything else that they need to deal with this summer, you don't turn down that sort of money for a player of that quality who has proven. We thought a year ago when he came, Phil, there were some durability concerns. Zero durability concerns. They now know, what he invests in his body, his nutrition, how he takes care of himself, that there is a thought that, he's going to miss a few games here and there. But, there's no fear that that body is going to break down significantly. So, wonderful deal for the Wolves. And heck, here we go, right? Starting Friday, late Friday night against the Bucks, 7-game homestand, 27 games left, only 10 on the road. Now they have some more back-to-backs, but even this weekend, are you fearful of a home back-to-back with Brooklyn, the second game of the back-to-back? Now I get it, Brooklyn just fired its coach. They'll probably be motivated on Saturday more so than if Jacques Vaughn was still the head coach. But, are you fearful of that back-to-back? To me, it's a very favorable schedule the rest of the way. To me, the Wolves are very well positioned to end up as the 1 seed in the Western Conference.
Yeah. Great stuff, Doogie. Darren Doogie Wolfson from the 5 Eyewitness News sports team. Tuesdays and Thursdays here on Minnesota Sports with Mackey.
A few more
Judd.
notes. Sean Johnson, Twins director of scouting. I want to mock, right? We could do an MLB mock draft at some point if you really wanted to get deep into the weeds. But anyway, Sean's in charge of the Twins draft. They have 2 picks in the top 35 come July. They get one of those compensatory picks for losing Sonny Gray. Anyway, he was down in Arizona, opening of college baseball over the weekend. So he saw Oregon State, Cal, Kansas State, New Mexico. He also got a chance to see a really good high school arm. Speaking of scouts, Oklahoma City Thunder, Orlando Magic had scouting representation at the Barn on Sunday for that Gophers-Rutgers game. I will be interested to see what happens with Cam Christie. Not suggesting he's going pro after this year, but I would not be shocked. Put it this way, there are people over at the U who would not be shocked if he ends up at least testing the waters, right? You can go test the waters. You can go work out for teams, right? Then make a determination after a certain amount of time, okay, keeping my name in the draft or pulling out. It's not a great draft. Of course, there will be an all-star or two, right? There's enough guys, but this is not considered a great draft. So if you're Cam Christie, would you at least consider testing the waters? I'm just telling you, there are people at the U who would not be shocked if he does that.
Yeah. All right, Dukes. We'll do it again on Thursday, man.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks,
See you, boys.
Thank you. Great stuff. That's a wrap here, Minnesota Sports with Mackey and Judd. Whew. Yeah, cigarette after that. I've never had one.
Reckless.